Win one for Filip Chytil? Nah.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blueshirts fans, to episode number 991 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, where do we even begin after a game like that? Just another complete disaster by the New York Rangers, just a completely half-hearted, lackluster effort against the Vegas Golden Knights. It all adds up to a 5-2 home loss in Madison Square Garden. And those of us who thought that, well, you know, maybe that road trip just needed to end. Maybe you get home, you can finish strong going into the All-Star break. Our hopes were kind of dashed there. And something that really makes this performance disheartening for me, and there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things we can talk about. We're going to get into Igor's awful performance. I know some people were sticking up for him. I can understand sticking up for him in the game against the Sharks. Those goals were on him. Igor was not ready to play hockey in this game. None of the Rangers were ready to play hockey in this game. That's the only thing you can say in Igor's defense, is that he didn't really get much help from his teammates, but he is one of the problems right now. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Once again, the biggest reason why I felt that this was such a disappointing performance by the Rangers is think about what happened earlier in the day. You've got Filip Chytil out there. He's back for the second, day or the second time back out on the ice with the Rangers, still wearing the non-contact jersey, but this guy has had multiple concussions, and I know the Rangers have never officially said that it's a concussion. They seem to just not want to use that word for one reason or another, but I mean, I think we can connect the dots here and all agree that that's obviously what's going on. And of course, he's out there, the main optional practice portion is concluded. It's only him, Zach Jones, and Jake Leschyshyn on the ice. Filip Chytil wipes out. He's down on the ice. He's down for 5 to 7 minutes. Needs to be helped off by both Jones and Leschyshyn. And I'm thinking, ever the optimist. And look, I mean, first of all, the concern goes to Filip Chytil. You hope that he's okay, and not just from a hockey perspective, obviously, just from a human perspective. But you're thinking about this game tonight. They're playing the Knights, and they haven't played well recently. Maybe, just maybe, the silverest of silver linings from what happened to Filip Chytil earlier that day in the morning is that, okay, well, maybe this is the thing that sparks the Rangers a little bit. Maybe this lights a little bit of fire under them. They're going to want to go out there and they're going to win one for Phil. And my issue with the Rangers is not that they did not ultimately win this game for Filip Chytil, because not everything can have that perfect ending, that storybook kind of a moment, that ultimate feel-good kind of a situation. It's not so much that they didn't win. It's that you got to give me more than this. You got to give us more than this. Your teammate, at possibly great risk to himself, is out there doing everything he can to battle his way back, to ultimately get back into the lineup. He was never going to play in this game, but the hope was that for Filip Chytil that he would be back out there at some point in February. And what just infuriates me is the Rangers saw this. They know what's going on, and they can't dig down a little bit to try to put some kind of an effort, some kind of energy together, some kind of a fiery performance to support their teammate, to support Filip Chytil, who, is back in his New York home and, probably shaken up from the whole thing. And that's what you give us. That's the performance you give to your teammate, who's doing everything in his power to get back onto the ice and try to help this team. Why even bother if you're Filip Chytil at this point? I don't want to speculate about what his future could be. I know a lot of people are saying that his career's over. I'm not going to say that because I don't know. I'm not a doctor. And even if I was a doctor, I'm not in tune with what's happening with Filip Chytil's case here. But for this to happen, for them to be this flat and this lifeless in a situation where that happened to Filip Chytil, unacceptable and borderline disgusting in my own personal opinion. And something that happened in this game, perhaps uncoincidentally, is that two of the only Ranger players that looked like they cared at least a little bit were Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere. Kakko, again, another real silver lining this game. At least he scored a goal. It was in garbage time. It was off a rebound, but fine. At least Kakko put the puck into the net. And Lafreniere had a couple of chances. He got robbed by Adin Hill on the doorstep. It looked like he had a goal, made a nasty move, drove to the net hard, made a nasty move, went to the backhand, got robbed. by Hill, but they at least, I mean, it was something from the two of them, right? They at least looked like they cared a little bit. And of course, those two played with Filip Chytil a good amount over the past couple of years with the kid line. It looked like those three all, got to be pretty close over that time. So maybe they were digging deep for a little extra something, but not too many other players in the Rangers were following suit. And just completely unacceptable. Now, as I say all this and talk about how, the Rangers should be out there motivated and fired up and ready to go and ready to play for their teammate who obviously, had a scary moment earlier that day, I will at least acknowledge the flip side of this too, because it's possible. And again, we don't know all the details. All we really know is that Filip Chytil went down during practice. Nobody there really seemed to see what had happened or just happened to be looking at Filip Chytil when he wiped out and when he, went down. And obviously he's leaving, can't put any weight on his one leg. And it's been reported now that it is believed to be related to, the concussions that he has suffered. So it is possible that maybe this whole thing really shook the Rangers up a little bit. So I'll at least acknowledge that possibility. I'll acknowledge the human side of this. We don't know. All we really know for sure as far as Chytil's interactions with his teammates after he fell in practice was that, again, it was just Zach Jones and Jake Leschyshyn who were out there. The two of them helped him get off the ice. Did the other Rangers see Filip Chytil? Were they even aware of, what was going on in that case? Or had some of them already even left and they were going to come back later for the game? I don't know exactly all the logistics and how that works, but did they see him? Was Filip Chytil, was he really shaken up in a bad way? Did that mess with the Rangers? That's at least possible. And if that is the case, then I can understand that to a degree. The problem, though, is that the Rangers have played so poorly and so lifeless and so lackluster recently anyway that I have no idea watching this game if that's what was going on or not. Were they affected negatively? Were they shaken up by what Filip Chytil went through? And maybe a bunch of them saw him in the locker room. I don't know what that scene was like, how difficult that might have been for some of these players. But again, it would be a lot more easy for me to cut the Rangers some slack here if they had been looking like they give a damn for the last, week or two or however long this slump has gone on. Certainly the 4-game road trip was just completely awful. Just a terrible road trip overall. They really didn't even deserve to win that game against the Ducks. And if they were playing just about anybody else in the league, they probably would not have won that game. So, again, if the Rangers had actually, played well or at least played hard for this road trip, and then you come back and this thing happens to Chytil and they come out against the Knights and play the way they played, at least then I could look at it and be like, okay, you know what? They went through some stuff earlier in the day. It was a scary situation. Their heads aren't really in it. Their hearts aren't really in it. They're thinking about their teammate. I could at least buy that. But again, because they've played so badly recently anyway, I don't know if that had anything to do with the way that they performed in this game, with the way that they were so lifeless and just so downtrodden, disengaged, disinterested. Nobody looked like they even wanted to be there. Nobody had any fire in their eyes. There's nothing going on after the whistle. And I'm not saying you have to start stuff with the opponent after every single whistle, after every single play stoppage. But can somebody just get in their opponent's face and like push them or something? Can somebody just make it look like you actually want to be at the rink playing hockey for the New York Rangers? There was very, very little of that going on in this game. And again, I would cut them some slack, given what happened to Chytil. But I have no idea. They might have played like this anyway, whether that happened to Chytil or not, because that's how they've been playing recently to begin with. So rant over, or at least this portion of the rant is over. I mean, we're just getting warmed up here on Locked On New York Rangers because we got to shift our attention to a former Vezina winning goalie who doesn't look like he can stop a beach ball right now. And I realize that's a little bit harsh. That might be the harshest thing I've ever said about Igor Shesterkin on this podcast. But facts are facts. He is really just, I don't know what's going on. He's not playing well. That's about, the only thing I know for sure right now is that Igor Shesterkin is not playing well. But we're going to turn our attention to Igor Shesterkin, a whole bunch of other stuff as well. I mean, he's not the only one to blame. He's a big part of this, but there's a lot of other players not getting the job done right now either. You got to think better days are eventually ahead for these teams. But this slump, if you even want to call it that at this point, has gone on for a really, really long time. And the Rangers need to figure out a way out of it sooner rather than later. And they play the Senators tonight. Got to win that game. Otherwise, I mean, this is probably going to be a long break anyway for this team, even if they beat Ottawa. But if they lose that game to the Senators, who I think they either have the worst record in the Eastern Conference or the second worst record in the East, it's either them or the Blue Jackets. One way or another, they're right near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. So you lose that one and you got this lengthy break. I mean, that is a miserable way to go into, an 8-day break or however long it is. But we're going to talk about Igor. We're going to talk about brutal second period and as much other, bad things that this team is doing right now that we can possibly fit in a 30 or 35-minute episode here. But we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our good friends at Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And in our next episode for the Everydayers, thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, even through some of the rougher times as a Ranger fan that we're all kind of going through right now. But thank you, as always, for tuning in. And in our next episode, you're going to want to check that one out. We're going to obviously cover whatever happens between the Rangers and the Senators a little bit later tonight. I'd like to think the Rangers can go in and win that game, play with some urgency, play with some desperation. But, watching this team recently, maybe I'm asking for too much. I don't know. But regardless, it certainly makes for an intriguing game tonight because, if they play well, you feel at least a little bit better going to the break. Not great, but a little bit better. If they come out and they lay an egg and they lose this game 5-1, I don't even know where you go from there. But we'll discuss it no matter what happens. And again, we're going to shift our attention to Igor Shesterkin now. I thought he was just awful in this game. He allowed 4 goals on 19 shots. And I saw some people defending Igor Shesterkin. PK Subban, take this with a grain of salt, but he was defending Igor Shesterkin during one of the intermissions as well. You can defend Igor Shesterkin in certain games this season, even certain games where he's allowed 4 goals, 5 goals, whatever it might be. There are times this season where, yes, he has been let down by his defense. Certainly, I think a great example of that was the last game against the Sharks. The 3 goals that the Sharks scored, the 2 at the end of not really the end of regulation, but third period, and then also the 1 in overtime. I don't know that a single goalie in hockey is stopping any of those 3 shots. 2 of them were set up by god-awful turnovers, and then the other one happened in overtime. A couple of quick passes after Mika Zibanejad lost his stick, and the Sharks were throwing picks and everything. There's nothing Igor could have done on that one either. So, yes, there's times this year where for sure he's gotten lit up, but it hasn't really been his fault. Not this game. This probably fell on Igor more than anybody else on the Rangers, and I don't say that lightly because there's a lot of Rangers not playing good hockey right now. Igor looks just kind of unfocused. I don't know what it is. Kind of passive in the net. Seems to be constantly sinking back into his crease when maybe he should be coming out and challenging guys and cutting away, certain shooting paths. Why is it that every shot from every player, from every different spot on the rink always seems like it's taking Igor by surprise? I think that's the biggest issue, more so than anything else right now. He just doesn't look like he's ready to make a save on a lot of these goals that he's allowing. And it's one thing, again, he's human. All these goalies in the NHL, as great as they are, as amazing as they are at what they do, they're human. And so, yeah, you might get caught a little bit flat-footed, 82 games, and they're not going to play all 82, but you know what I mean. Any goalie can have that happen to them in any situation, in any game. It's happening constantly with Igor Shesterkin. It happened over and over in this game. And I actually have a theory about why this might be happening. So maybe Igor is watching what the Rangers are doing when they have the puck, and specifically on the power play, because the Ranger power play has been not good at all lately. He's watching what the Rangers are doing, and what the Rangers are doing when they have the puck, and again, especially on the power play, pass, 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 pass back to the blue line, pass back to the half boards, pass back to the blue line, pass across the blue line, pass back across to the blue line, turnover. That's usually how the Rangers have been going when it comes to, them having the puck. Yeah, they're maintaining possession, but if you're never going to shoot the puck, never even going to make a dangerous pass, dangerous in terms of dangerous for the other team, not for yourself, you're not going to score. And so, maintaining possession can only do so much in a situation like that. So maybe Igor's seeing what the Rangers are doing when they had the puck, and he's just anticipating that's what everybody does, right? That's what our opponent is going to do tonight too. They're just going to pass the puck and pass the puck and pass the puck, never actually shoot it. Maybe that's what's going on here. But in all seriousness, again, there's just no excuse for this. It just feels like he's not ready to make a save. And it feels like an easy fix. Like if we can figure this out, how can Igor Shesterkin not figure this out? Benoit Allaire, the best in the business, the best goalie coach on the planet, how can he not figure this out and have Igor a little bit more ready to make these saves? And even Jonathan Quick, I've mentioned this before too, but veteran mentor, right? Kind of the big brother for Igor Shesterkin. Is he not seeing this either? Are they seeing it and Igor's aware of it and he thinks he's going to be better at it in a certain game and then just isn't? I mean, I don't know, but it feels like such a quick and easy fix, and it wouldn't solve all the Rangers' problems. It wouldn't even solve all of Igor Shesterkin's problems right now, but it would help. I mean, you'd at least not be giving up goals simply because you're getting caught flat-footed. And again, that happened over and over and over in this game. It basically happened, I would say, on just about all of the goals that the Knights scored, all 4 that they scored, minus the empty netter at the end. And we're going to break down the goals that the Knights scored when we talk about the second period as a whole, because believe it or not, as much as I'm going in on this team right now, the Rangers, I thought, played great in the first period. I thought they had an excellent first period, a great first 20 minutes. They were out there asserting themselves. They actually, for once, gave up a goal and then responded. They responded in a positive way. Go figure. They got a goal from Blake Wheeler, tied the game for the most part. I thought the Rangers were basically skating circles around the Knights in the first period. They had the puck on Vegas's side of the rink for, the entirety of the first period, basically. Rink was tilted. And, it all got away from them in the second period. They just stopped playing hockey. And, with Igor, another question I'll ask here, when's the last time that he's made like a really, really good save? I mean, I'm sure, you go through all the games, they're sprinkled in every now and then, but it just feels like right now, if the opposing team gets a medium to high danger scoring chance, it is very, very likely going to be a goal. And on a lot of these, it seems like he's not even close to being able to stop them. So again, I don't know if it's mechanical. I don't know if it's in his head, all of the above. But obviously, Igor Shesterkin needs to be a heck of a lot better than this. We're used to him being the backbone of this team, the strength of this team. And I do think based on his track record, basically everything that he's done in his NHL career, the past 4 seasons before this one, that would tell me that he'll eventually get back to that. But he is just in such a funk right now. Maybe this break will do him some good. We'll see. But it's crazy, this game starts and they're showing the stats on the screen of the 2 goalies. You've got Adin Hill against Igor Shesterkin. And I see that. And it's not just the stats. It's just kind of in general. It's like, wow, the Rangers, they are at a big disadvantage in goal right now because it's Igor Shesterkin against Adin Hill, the guy that won the Stanley Cup last year. And he's missed some time this year, but his numbers are still very good when he's played. It feels like we're already at a massive disadvantage. And that's just not a feeling that I'm used to, that Ranger fans in general over the last 30 years, maybe even longer than that, are used to. The Rangers always, have the edge in net, but they don't right now. And it's crazy because there's a lot of people kind of clamoring for Jonathan Quick to get some more playing time right now. And I don't know if he's going to be the starting goalie in this one. I'll try to check that before today's episode is over. If I remember, I'm kind of all over the place right now because that's just the way that it's going right now for the Rangers. But there's people clamoring for Quick to get some more playing time. And, even at the start of the season, Igor gets off to a little bit of a rough start and Jonathan Quick is, partying like it's 2014 basically, and really turning the clock back and playing some excellent hockey. And there's people saying, "Oh, is there a goalie controversy?" And my reaction at the time was like, "Okay, pump the brakes a little bit." Igor's in a little bit of a rut right now, and Quick's playing awesome, and that's really cool to see. Obviously, him, being maybe even a comeback player of the year nominee. I mean, would he be in that conversation? I'd have to look around the league to know for sure, but. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like, no, there's no way. I mean, this would have to continue and continue and continue. We're past the halfway point of the season right now. And even with Quick coming back to earth a little bit, he's still playing far better than Igor Shesterkin recently. They put a stat on the screen on ESPN, and I'd rather this game be on MSG, but that's a whole nother story, and we'll save that for another day. But they put a stat or shared a stat out loud. I don't remember exactly how they displayed it, but they basically said that in the month of January, Igor Shesterkin, out of 41, qualified goalies, meaning you've played in enough games to qualify for this stat, he is out of 41 goalies dead last in save percentage. And watching these games, seeing the way that they've unfolded, it's surprising, but it's not surprising. He just has not played well, and he needs to be better than this. And yeah, there's times where he could use some more help. There's times where he's the main reason why the Rangers are losing. And I really do think that was the case in this game last night. Steve Valiquette, let me see. I think I got it in my phone right here. He does that thing, where he's got his clear sight analytics and, he'll basically kind of track, or, people on his team will track the high danger scoring opportunities, the low danger scoring opportunities, the medium danger scoring opportunities. And then from all that, he'll come up with, a goals expected, basically kind of a deal for both teams. So the Rangers last night, and this will give you an idea of how well the Aiden Hill played. Rangers obviously scored 2 goals. They were expected to get 4.04 goals per Valaket's analytics. The Knights scored, they scored 4, but they scored 5 technically, but it was really 4 because, obviously the one was the empty netter. So they scored 4 goals, not counting the empty netter, and they were expected to get 2.01 goals. So that'll give you an idea of, just how it's going right now for Igor Shesterkin. It's just not good. And, again, he just has to be better than this. It's just plain and simple. He's gotten beat on his glove side a bunch of times this season. They said during this game, he's been beaten glove side 20 times this season. It only happened 19 times all of last season. And one last kind of side note on this whole thing. It really is wild to me to think that Igor Shesterkin is an all-star. Igor Shesterkin is going to play in the all-star game this season. And if you ever want to know just how broken the NHL all-star selection process really is, to begin with, if I was making the rules here, and they haven't asked me, but if they do, I'll let them know that I think that they should get rid of that rule where all 32 teams need at least one all-star representative. If your team's bad and nobody's having a good season, then you don't get an all-star. Plain and simple, the end, done. You don't get to be represented in the all-star game this season. But to see how ridiculous this really is, consider the fact that 2 years ago, that was the year that Igor Shesterkin won the Vezina, put up video game numbers, as I like to say, was in the running. He was one of the 3 finalists for the Hart Trophy and the Ted Lindsay, along with Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon, and got some consideration, I think, for both awards, but obviously didn't win either. But the fact that he was in the conversation is very impressive in its own right, and put up one of the best seasons that we've ever seen by an NHL goalie. And that's not hyperbole. Go back and watch highlights. Go back and just look at the stats. He was absolutely incredible. Igor Shesterkin that year was not an all-star. And this year, he's going to walk into the all-star game locker room with a save percentage of .899. He is under 900 now as far as save percentage is concerned, and he's got a goals against average of 2.86. He was not an all-star 2 years ago, putting up just an absolutely legendary season, and that word is not too strong. That's exactly what it was, and he is an all-star this season where he's ranked, in the high teens or the low 20s in key goalie stats. It's just wild to think about, and I feel bad doing this, but at a certain point, I have to call it like I see it. And the biggest, most frustrating aspect of the whole thing is that, again, there continues to be this trend where it looks like Igor Shesterkin simply is not ready to stop the puck. He's not ready for the shot. He gets completely taken by surprise. He's flat-footed, and he's getting beat now by guys that aren't even like goal scorers. The Knights got a couple of goals. Marchessault had the hat trick, including the empty netter, but the first goal scorer was like his second goal of the season. The guy that got the second goal, Kolosai, I believe it is. Something like that. He got his 4th goal of the season. These are not exactly, prime, big time, bona fide snipers that he's getting beat by. So very disheartening. I feel like Igor's best hockey is still in front of him this year because honestly, how could it not be? When you look at what he's done his first 4 years in the league, and people try to say like, oh, well, Igor wasn't that good last year either. Igor was good last year. He wasn't like otherworldly the way he was the year before, but he was good. And his first 2 seasons in the league before he ended up winning the Vezina in his 3rd year, those are very good too. Go back and look at those numbers. He was very good during a challenging time for the Rangers. Rangers weren't really a very good team back then, and obviously he's in the same locker room as Henrik Lundqvist and having to replace a legend, and I thought he handled himself about as well as he could. So as I say all this, it does give me hope. It does give me reason to believe that he can turn it around. He can play better hockey than this, but when is it going to happen? It hasn't really happened this season. He's had a good game here, a good game there, nice save there, a clutch stop there. But for the most part, it's a very disappointing season, at least thus far, for Igor Shesterkin. And the good news is that against all odds, the Rangers are somehow still in first place in the Metro Division. We would have taken that coming into the season. It's unbelievable the way that we've gotten here. The ridiculously hot start, and then just how bad it's been recently. Just these flat, lifeless performances, not just by Igor, but by the entire team. So, yeah, that's kind of where things stand with Igor Shesterkin. In just a second, we're going to highlight the just brutal second period for the Rangers. I don't know if there's any other word to describe it. And again, very disheartening because it looked like they had some real jump in the first period. I thought they probably deserved better than being tied 1-1 during the first intermission, but you got to keep going, and they just did not. So we're going to talk about everything that happened there. in the second period in just a second. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Sleeper. It is past the halfway point of the NHL season, and obviously the Rangers have gone through their fair share of ups and downs, more downs than ups recently, but they are still in first place in the Metro. But regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Panarin or Lafreniere or Kreider or somebody else on the Rangers who might be playing some half-decent hockey right now will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Ranger fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you will get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, let's keep everything rolling here. And yeah, this might be a new grand champion as far as, how harsh I've been on the Rangers after a loss. I thought the last one would stand for a while, the loss that they had to the Sharks, but we might have a new champion here today. And I hate to be this negative, but when you're playing as poorly as the Rangers have played recently, it's one thing to go through a slump, and it's one thing to just go out and get beat. You can have hockey games where two teams go out there and they compete tooth and nail, and you got to grind and work your way to a win, and somebody edges the other one 2-1 in overtime or something like that, and you can live with a loss like that. But the Rangers aren't doing anything to help themselves. It feels like they have to be, at least right now, and not for the whole season, and I don't think going forward either, but right now, the way they've played over the last handful of games here, they got to be one of the easiest teams in the NHL to play against, because there's no fire, there's no fight, there's just a whole lot of nothing out there. There's a lot of faraway looks on the faces of these Ranger players, and I feel like, I mentioned this earlier, but at some point, can somebody on the Rangers just get in somebody's face on the other team? And I feel like right now, you're kind of seeing the Ranger opponents not really do that either. Like, they're not trying to start anything with the Rangers as far as extracurriculars, because they probably see how lifeless the Rangers look right now, and their mentality is probably like, okay, well, don't do anything to get them going. Don't do anything to rile them up. Just go out there and out hockey them. And that's what they're doing. There's no reason for any of the Ranger opponents to really go after them right now, because the Rangers just look that lifeless. So they're not going to do anything to try to wake them up at all. Anytime there actually is a little bit of pushing, a little bit of a skirmish, again, there was, after this game here, and this one that just ended, it was Fox, and I think Trouba was out there too. And, they're saying something to the players on the Knights, and I don't think it was really that intense. But why are you doing it now? The game's over. You just got your butts handed to you. You know what? Just skate off into the locker room and take your loss. You lost. It's over. You didn't do anything to bring any fire during the game. Why are you going to do it once the game's over? It just doesn't make any sense. But you got this brutal second period for the Rangers. Now that I've finally worked my way back to that, Mika Zibanejad takes a slash early in the second period. And again, the game is tied 1-1 right now. That gives Vegas a power play opportunity. And, that felt like it was one of the only times that I think, because Zibanejad's name was called on the night. It happened in the neutral zone. I mean, granted, the Knights were going in on the rush. They had the puck and everything, but just an unnecessary penalty there. And then you've got a situation where, Panarin has his shot blocked. This is a little bit later after the power play. Panarin shooting from the blue line. Shot is blocked. You got Colasar going in up the left side. He shoots from the top of the left circle. Keandre Miller was kind of bearing down on him from the other side of the ice, so he had to shoot it a little bit earlier than he wanted, but it didn't matter. He scored anyway. From the top of the left faceoff circle, Colasar, I'm trying to remember if he was on the third line or the fourth line, but obviously not, a brilliant offensive player. This was a really good shot. You got to give some credit there, but I just don't know how Igor Shesterkin can get beat on a shot like this. That's another thing about Igor, is that when he's facing somebody on a breakaway, it just doesn't feel like he's going to make the save right now. And I don't even know. I mean, this was sort of a breakaway, but not like a typical breakaway where you're in the clear and you can go right to the net and do whatever you want. Miller was bearing down on him, so Colasar had to shoot the puck earlier than he probably would have liked, and he scored anyway, and it's 2-1 Vegas, and they were on top for good. And then in the next shift, I want you guys, you know what? I need a minute. Okay, what do you guys think in the shift that happened in the shift that followed the Rangers giving up a goal? What do you think happened very soon after? Jonathan Marchessault scores, the Knights go up 3-1. And at this point, this game was over. And I'm usually not that person. I always think, as long as there's still time on the clock, hockey or really even any other sport, anybody can come back, right? It can happen. And at this point, you're not even halfway through this game and you're only down by 2 goals. 2 goals is not an insurmountable deficit. But when you look at the way the Rangers have been playing recently, you look at the way that the Rangers have been playing in this game. Did anybody really think at this point that they're going to rally and come back and win this game 4-3? This wasn't going to happen. They weren't doing anything well. By this point in the game. Again, they had the good first period, but by this point, they'd shot themselves in the foot, and just the vibes and the way everything's been going lately, you just don't think that there's any way they're going to come back and win this game. The chances of them even scoring 3 goals is minuscule, or it would actually have to be 4. I mean, I guess you could score a total of 3 goals and then win in the shootout or something, but give me a break. I mean, that just wasn't going to happen in this game. And then the next shift after this, they almost gave up another goal. The shot barely went wide. You almost had the Rangers giving up. They would have really outdone themselves there, giving up 3 goals in the span of a couple minutes, minute and a half, whatever it was. Just bad, man. And then you've got, Johnny Brodzinski's taking an offensive zone penalty while the Rangers have the puck in the offensive zone with complete control of the puck and doing what they do, passing the puck around the perimeter and not shooting. And then out of nowhere, you've got Brodzinski taking a penalty. Vegas goes on the power play, and they end up going up 4-1 in the third period. And I was going to go ahead and break down the other goals that the Knights scored, but I feel like we've piled on Igor enough in this one. I do feel bad about this, but at a certain point, you got to call it like you see it. I give people the benefit of the doubt, players the benefit of the doubt for as long as I possibly can. But when the team sucks, and that's the case right now. And there's no sugarcoating it. Blake Wheeler after the game said something like, I don't have the exact quote in me, but he said something in front of me, but he said something like, teams are made when they're in the fire, and we're certainly in the fire right now. And I'm sure a lot of Ranger fans that saw that or just heard me, repeat it, probably rolling their eyes a little bit. At least it's something a little bit different. You got Mika Zibanejad after these games saying, well, we just got to keep working hard. You're not working hard right now. You guys aren't working hard. Overall, I mean, maybe you get a shift or 2 every now and then where you get a kind of a blue-collar shift and they actually get the forecheck going and they actually fight for a loose puck. But that's few and far between right now for the Rangers. The start of the turnaround begins with you guys starting to work hard like you were earlier in the season, because everybody on this Ranger team was busting their tails early in the season through October, through November. Recently I've been talking about, I've kind of been lumping December and January together, but I really shouldn't be doing that. I mean, the Rangers stumbled a little bit toward the end of December. Rangers went 9-5 in December. So I guess that's another silver lining here too. We're getting toward the end of January. So for the most part, the Rangers basically had 2 excellent months, a good month, and now a bad month. So 3 out of the 4 months have been great, but recently it's just fallen apart on them. And you hope that obviously this is, like Blake Wheeler said, they're in the fire right now, and they can find their way out of it. They're going to have to, and hopefully it starts tonight. It's got to start tonight with a win against the Senators. And not to get too far ahead of ourselves, a topic we'll discuss on a future episode, but obviously, the trade deadline, it's going to be happening in March. We're less than 2 months away at this point, and Rangers are in a tough spot because they're in first place. They've got some good players, some talented players on this team, but they're playing so poorly right now. And of course, they're a little bit handcuffed by their cap situation anyway, but how much do you really kind of go all in this season? If the Rangers keep playing like this heading into the deadline, it's a really tough spot because, again, they'll still be in a playoff position. They will. I know that some people are saying they'll miss the playoffs. They would have to just continue to collapse to miss the playoffs and have that many teams pass them. But yeah, you're in a playoff spot, but you're playing so poorly lately. Do you really push all your chips in near the deadline this season, or as many of the chips as you can push in? I just don't know that would be very smart either. So I don't know. It's going to be a difficult situation. The Rangers can make it a lot easier on Drury and the rest of the front office if they just start playing well again and they kind of rediscover who they were at the start of the season. And, there's a situation where, maybe they increase their lead in first place, or maybe they fall out of first place for a little bit and then they get it back. I mean, they're still in first. Saying that out loud just blows my mind with how they've played recently. But the Rangers, yes, still in first place in the Metro Division. Some other notes from this game. Trouba's apparently got a meeting with the Department of Player Safety. I didn't notice this when it happened live, but off of a face-off, he was battling for position. His elbow went up, caught somebody in the face. Looked accidental to me, didn't look malicious at all. But knowing the Department of Player Safety, they'll probably give Trouba a 5-game suspension for this. There's been a lot of other things Trouba's done that I think have been worse than this, where he's gotten fined but not suspended. There was a situation earlier this year where I said I would have been okay with a 1 or 2 game suspension for Trouba. It was the thing where he hit Frederick in the head with his stick. Nothing happened there, but you watch this will be the time that they, throw the book at Jacob Trouba, because they're just wildly inconsistent with all their rulings on everything. And then, Ryan Lindgren, the other big news from this game, he was put into the boards kind of awkwardly, left, and was ruled out by the second period from returning in this game. Haven't seen anything definitive on Lindgren. Not sure if he's going to play tonight. And look, he hasn't been great lately either. I don't think anybody on this Ranger team has really been great lately, but it's not a good time if you're the Rangers to lose a player that I've referred to and some of you have referred to as the heart and soul of this team. Not a good time for that to be happening. Hopefully Lindgren's okay. If I had to guess, and I'm not a doctor again, but, if it's something that is kind of minor, maybe they hold him out tonight because he's got a big break ahead of him anyway, and you just let him get ready to make sure he's good to go after the All-Star break. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it's certainly the way things are going. It's certainly not a good time to lose somebody who's typically on your top pair as far as the blue line is concerned. But yeah, I figure we can call it there. This is not a good stretch for the Rangers, to say the very least. But hang in there with me, guys. We'll be back here. Hopefully we can talk about a win going into the All-Star break and at least feel a little bit better about where this team is. I know the Senators aren't exactly world beaters, but they got to get a win against somebody, no matter who they're playing, and at least feel somewhat good after that hopefully happens a little bit later here tonight. But we'll see how it all goes. Once again, thank you guys as always for tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.